It's me, Dax, also known as Nicole DeBoer. You are listening to Random Trek.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Random Trek. I am your captain, the highly empathic Christopher Ingle, joined as always by my illogical and yet somewhat angry first officer, Commander Brennan, the Mystical Mar. Brennan, your thoughts to my thoughts?
I didn't like the way he looked at me.
Today we are on Star Trek Voyager Season 2, Episode 16, Meld.
Mm.
Brennan, let's get your thoughts, just kind of the initial reaction, because this is one that I definitively remember watching in real time when it first came out. What did you
Mm.
think of this episode?
Well, I never saw it until Star Trek was on streaming,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen it a few times. And it's a really interesting episode to deal with, a murder mystery.
Mm-hmm.
The mystery, though, is quickly solved, and then it becomes more of the psychological thriller.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good stuff, so I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I remember watching this, and growing up, I was a horror buff as a kid. I loved horror movies, and Child's Play was one of the first horror movies that I ever remember watching. And Brad Dourif, still to this day, scares the heebie-jeebies out of me.
Okay, were you way too young to be watching that movie?
Yes, yes, I was.
Yeah, for some reason, whenever people ask me what movie did I see when I was too young to be watching it, I don't have an answer because my parents didn't let me watch things like that.
Yeah, it was Child. I watched it. My dad warned me. But I wanted to watch the doll movie, so I watched the doll movie. And let me tell you, to this day, I still remember being scared, lying in bed as a kid, and imagining little flying Chucky dolls above my head. And Brad Dourif's
Uh,
voice to this day, like, triggers that a little bit. So,
yeah, oh yeah.
yes. But let's get into this episode. So in this episode, a crew member of Voyager, named Darwin, is found dead, and an investigation happens trying to figure out what's going on. We quickly find out that a Betazoid crew member, he was a Maquis, named Lon Suter, killed him, as Brennan referenced, because he didn't like the way he looked at him.
Mm-mm.
And they kind of do their due diligence. Tuvok does. By the way, very Tuvok-centric episode.
Very much.
With a side plot we'll get to with Mr. Paris. But so Tuvok's doing an investigation, and he wants to figure out the reasoning behind his act. What is the motive? He's like, there's no question he did it. There's DNA evidence, everything's there. All of that is correct. He did it. But why did he do it? And the answer that he gives confounds Tuvok. And for the logical man that he is, this is a pretty rare feat to confuse a Vulcan.
Yeah.
So Tuvok's got to figure it out. Like, this is the mystery for him, is the why. And so he can't get it out of him, can't figure it out. He's walking down the hall, and like a light turns on, and he turns around and he goes back to him and says, "I'd like to do a mind meld with you. What we can do this way, I can understand your motive, and you can get some of my control to help you control those raging issues that you have, and we can help each other out." Okay, so he does this. It causes Suter's violent impulses to be transferred into Tuvok, but Suter is now able to calm in a way that he's never had before. Tuvok is, he's a trained Vulcan. He's trying to suppress those feelings, deal with it. We find him in the mess hall, trying to focus, and he's really stressed. And Neelix is trying to get him to smile. There's this meme that I've seen of Neelix trying to make Tuvok smile. Poor Tim Russ. But But in this moment, right after that, he grabs him and he kills him right there. And we find out, oh, he's running a simulation to help control those urges. Way to go, Tuvok. Very smart. But eventually it becomes too much. And Tuvok confines himself to his quarters and basically removes himself from duty permanently. He revokes his own access codes and his security
He
clearances,
locks
and
the
he's like,
door and he can't unlock
lock
it.
the door. I am not coming out.
And he deletes the way to open it.
Right.
Swallowing the key, as they say.
So Janeway comes as probably the only person who could talk to Tuvok.
Mm.
And she convinces him, go to sick bay. And he's like, you might need to sedate me. And they do, and they get him into sick bay. So the doctor tries to cure Tuvok of his urges by forcing the emotions to come out. If we can release them and purge them, then we can get the Tuvok back that we have, instead of them being repressed and he's conflicting with them. But unfortunately, that fails. Tuvok escapes. So Suitor wants to be punished for his crimes. He feels that he murdered. He should be murdered. Death penalty should happen against him. But while he believes that, the Federation does not believe in the death penalty. But there's an interesting question that comes along from Tuvok and Chakotay. Should he really have to stay in there in the brig or in his quarters? Isn't that kind of cushy? Maybe the death penalty is not the worst idea in the world.
Given the circumstances.
Yeah, given the circumstances. But Janeway is adamantly against it.
Mm-hmm.
But Suitor wants to die. He believes now that he's calm, he needs to be punished. So
probably the logical side of him, I imagine.
Yeah. So he finds Suitor, hoping that if he executes Suitor, that these rages will go away because it's a real person, a real human being. But Suitor convinces Tuvok not to kill him instead and do another mind meld. Get your emotions back. Take it back. But unfortunately, it renders Tuvok completely unconscious. Suitor notifies the crew and says, hey, come get Tuvok. The doctor watches over Tuvok and figures that since he was unable to kill Suitor, that he is recovering. It's just slow, but he is recovering. There is a B plot, which I hesitate to call it a B plot because it's actually important to season 2. But we see Tom Paris running a replicator ration lottery. And he gets in a little bit of trouble with Chakotay about it. It doesn't go anywhere other than we see him being a little insubordinate and obstinate to Chakotay, which he'll continue to do into this season. And it's a little arc that's very important when dealing with the Kazon. Otherwise, if you just watch it as a bottle episode, which, by the way, this was supposed to be a bottle episode. This was designed by the producers as a cost-cutting episode. So you notice they don't go to planets. They don't go around. There's no shuttles. There's no excessive CG. It's just sets, actors, that's it. And primarily, Suitor and Tuvok.
Yes.
So this was designed to be a bottle episode, and actually quite a successful. Bottle episodes sometimes don't work, but this one absolutely does. But let's go into the character development, because this is what's really important here. Mr. Tuvok, what do we think about his trip into madness?
Ken Russ is an astonishingly good actor. And even though we're kind of used to the typical Tuvok with it's slightly sarcastic Vulcan, hilarious in his own way, very deadpan Tuvok. getting to see Tim Russ go a little bit more essentially proto-Vulcan, um, getting the basically like what Vulcans were like in the past. If you think about that, we have heard again and again that Vulcans were once more violent than humans. And if you consider our own history and the terrible stuff we've done as a species, can you imagine what Vulcans were like?
Yeah.
Particularly because they're stronger than us. We're just trying to imagine what their world was like before Surak's teachings is mind-blowing, and I think Tim Russ gets to play a lot with those uncontrolled rages and things like that that I imagine that Vulcans used to be like quite regularly. That was just the way they were at once upon a time. And Tim Russ does a great job, I think.
We don't get enough opportunities to explore Vulcan weakness. And I'm not saying he's weak, but I think it's fair to say that the complete suppression of emotions is not always the wisest avenue to go. While Vulcan logic makes sense and being clear of emotions so you can look at the options objectively and make the best decision, there's merit to it. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's important to put your feelings aside. But this is where I think it was done better overall with Spock. Because Spock was half human, half Vulcan, you got to play with those avenues regularly.
All the time, yeah.
Tuvok is a full Vulcan. And throughout the series, we don't get a lot of opportunities for Tuvok to stretch. Sometimes we do. This is one of them. So to allow Tim Russ to do something that is not Tuvok, that is against that. I'm thinking of this one, the one where, sorry, once again, he does go mad. I remember that. I can't remember the circumstances. And then the one where he lost all his memories and personality. That one too, where he's just playing something different. I really like when he has the opportunity to stretch, and it's so good. And his level of anger and madness, like, it turns into a horror film. Him in sick bay behind the force field. Lower the force field.
He basically turns into Brad Dourif. I mean,
well, I was going to say a bit of a Hannibal Lecter.
Yes, actually, you're right. Yes.
There's a smile. You noticed it? There's a smile on he smiles and he laughs, but it's maniacal, it's sadistic.
Yes.
It's not wholesome, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
It's uncomfortable, and it's supposed to be.
Yes.
But at the same time, Brad Dourif channeling the Tuvok that we know, so good.
Yes.
So good. And this is
Brad Dourif
oh,
is an underrated actor, I think.
Grima Wormtongue.
Grima Wormtongue.
Great character in Lord of the Rings. You hate him, but he pulls it off so well. You love to hate him.
Yep, and Oscar nominated for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yep, and of course, as I mentioned,
Chucky.
the voice of Chucky for countless years.
Many years.
Now it's Mark Hamill.
Gee, go figure.
It works. But I really like him in this and the shift. You don't get to see him angry until later. So Suter does come back at the end of this season, at the beginning of this season, when we deal with the Kazon arc. Yeah, Basics, when they take over. And you see Suter forced to kill. Suter later on, we find out, has been working with Tuvok, channeling his emotions, focusing as much as he can. And you know what? Let me give a little background to Suter, because I didn't do that. Suter is a Betazoid. Now, he is a full Betazoid. So you remember, Deanna could only empathically use her because she was only half Betazed. Her mother, on the other hand, was a full telepath and a very powerful one. So
And a
Uh,
very
uh,
flirtatious one, too.
yes. But so Betazoids are very telepathic, very emotional. In fact, their powers are often guided by the emotions.
Mhm.
We see that. But his powers don't work. They don't. He can't do the things that a typical Betazid does. So that's very different for him, and he points that out that he's always felt odd, always felt different. But he's never been able to do what he's able to do. Um, and so his answer when Tuvok asked him why he did it, I didn't like the way he looked at me. And the real heart of this is the look, a look at the criminal mind. Sometimes one of the greatest mysteries is not how they did it, but why they did it. And there are records of both Tim Russ, as well as the writers and producers, really researching and having an expert on hand to talk about the criminal mind and why they do things. And the reality is, I think in the 90s, when this came out, mid 90s, we were not as focused on mental health as we should be.
Yeah, I agree.
And so now we look at it, and then you would have just stuffed him away like a Jeffrey Dahmer, and that's the end of it. You never would have, we wouldn't let him out see the light of day again. Or in whatever state you're in, maybe he's executed. You just don't deal with it. But now I look at it going, this guy needs help. He was born this way. It's not his fault. He has to be responsible for the actions he takes. Somebody help him. And I'm glad Tuvok does. Tuvok's trying to do something. And I really appreciate here that look that the criminal mind is not as black and white as we make it out to be. It's not always modus operandi.
Yeah, it's not like some of these things we've seen, like murders where it's like, well, they killed that
it's
person
revenge, or
because,
I want the money, or
or like
yeah.
it's one of these political
Mm-hmm.
ones where it's like, they killed that other person because they thought that other person was a danger to American society, or
Mm-hmm.
where it's a very clear on motives.
He needs help.
And this is
And
not one of those.
we see by the end of this season that he is getting the help he needs, but he is still going to be punished for his crimes by being
Yeah,
confined to quarters. They
yeah.
confine him to quarters, which is, I think, a fair compromise. They remove, advanced replicator abilities. He can make food, basics, very basic things. They take him out maybe to go to the holodeck for exercise, or but he's a prisoner. He's a prisoner, but they don't harm him any further, and the idea of execution no longer comes about.
Yep.
And that's an interesting thing too, because I really think to Janeway, go forward to the end of the 5th and into the 6th season when dealing with Captain Ransom.
Oh, yes, Captain Ransom.
How willing she was to kill because someone betrayed their Starfleet uniform and betrayed the ideals. She was so appalled by that
She
that she
pulled
was
a she
willing to
pulled a
stop them.
Cisco.
She did pull a
She
Cisco.
pulled a Cisco.
That was her Eddington, 100%. And she was willing to kill individuals or risk their lives at the very least. Yet here, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Mhm.
Interesting how 4 years kind of changes things.
True.
But Janeway proving to be what she is.
Janeway is something else.
She really is. But this is such a good episode and a great look at the criminal mind and the idea of motive and
Yeah.
mental illness.
And not to be critical, but I don't think, just in my own opinion,
Mhm.
I don't think Voyager really takes off until Silver Nine is introduced. But this is one a really good episode from the first 3 seasons.
Yeah.
At least for me, it doesn't take off till 7 comes along.
I think it's like Next Generation. Third season, they were righting the ship.
Yeah.
The ship was getting
First
right.
two, but this thankfully is a good episode
Yeah,
on the second season. So
absolutely great. This was great, and um, if you're a fan of Brad Dourif, but not a Star Trek fan, first of all, how are you listening to this? I would
yes.
like to know that. But second of all, please check this out. It is a very good bottle episode, and it's a great acting job from him. In fact, everybody had nothing but positivity to say about Brad Dourif and working with him. In fact, this shocked me. We have Ethan Phillips to thank because apparently when the producers were deciding to cast Brad Dourif as Suitor, Dourif had a conversation with Ethan Phillips. So Dourif's girlfriend, that's what it is. Dourif's girlfriend had been friends with Ethan Phillips for years. So they arranged a dinner meeting, and he pitched it to him, and he went, "Yeah, let's do this." So we have Ethan Phillips to thank for something. I'm shocked.
Of course.
Yes. The only downside, the director, Cliff Bole, wished so much that they could have given Brad Dourif more to do. He said, but hey, you only got 44 minutes. But we get two really killer episodes down the line in the season finale and season premiere. All right, final thoughts on this episode.
Well, I don't really particularly care much for the Pantera storyline, but that's just a minor complaint.
Well, it's so important later on, and it's one of those things that you don't notice right away.
Yeah, I guess I need to sit down and watch the whole season.
If you remember, they knew for this season, they knew that there was someone in the crew who was selling them out to the Kazon. And they were trying to figure that out, but they needed to get someone on the inside. So by making Tom Paris into a malcontent, it made it appealing because Seska would believe,
yes,
knowing who Tom Paris was, that this was likely.
Siska the troublemaker.
It was a plan by Janeway and Tuvok,
Mm-hmm.
and Chakotay was left out of it, so that way there was that competition and aggression, which is why Chakotay and Paris for 3-4 episodes are butting heads all the time. And there's an episode, Investigations, where Paris leaves the ship and joins the Kazon. But again, that was an undercover plot to figure out who it was.
So, just taken on its own basis,
By its own,
that bit doesn't really.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is a great episode.
Mm-hmm.
Don't skip it.
Oh, watch this one. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going to have a little bit of a schedule flip-flop. Next week, we were supposed to do our movie night, as we always do. However, my lovely wife, the ship's counselor, is getting ready to have surgery. And so we want to give her a little time to rest. And she is going to be our guest for our next movie night. So next week, we are going to take a look at our animated fare. We're going to look at a trio of animated half-hour episodes and see what we think. And then the week after that, we will be taking a look at the much loved by me, Batteries Not Included.
Which I have never seen.
He has never seen this. I'm really excited that he gets to watch this. Really. Because I'm going to go into talking about amazing stories because that's what creates this. It is amazing stories. And for those who don't know, that was a anthology series that was done originally by Spielberg and all of his famous friends. Joe Dante and so many people came in to direct and write, and it was all under Amblin. And I remember watching these in reruns when I was younger. So, this is not that, but it was supposed to be. But Spielberg loved it so much that he agreed to produce it as a film, and it's a beautiful family film, and I can't wait to talk about it. But let's take a look at the randomizer. And what episodes are we going to get?
Yeah, let's start with the animated series.
All right, original animated series. Here we go. Pressing the button now. All right. We're getting season 1, episode 10, Mud's Passion. All right.
Goody.
Yep. All right, Lower Decks. Season 4, episode 7, A Few Badgies More. We get Badgie.
Badgie. Oh,
I
no.
love Badgie and Goodgie.
Sorry, what was the date? Not date, the season.
Season 4, episode 7.
Okay.
And then finally, Star Trek Prodigy, season 2, episode 4, Temporal Mechanics 101. Okay. It's going to be a lot of fun. I love this. And Brennan and I just watched the series finale of Lower Decks.
Yes,
and
we did.
I do think down the line, we will probably do a short kind of retrospect of 5 seasons of Lower Decks and what we've thought. 50 episodes. We've already gone through 50 episodes of this series, and I'm itching to talk about it as a whole. See what we feel and think and reflect.
Indeed.
And actually, I got my 14-year-old daughter to watch it with me. I might have her join in just to get a teenager's perspective, a fresh face on Star Trek from this angle. Anyway, down the line, something to think about. We'll look at. I'm really excited, and we will have a very, very special Star Trek in January. I haven't even told Brendan about this. The Long Trek, Section 31, will be released.
That's right.
And Brendan and I will do our review of Section 31 for a movie night for one of these nights. It's going to happen. Because
Yes.
we gotta review it. And so we'll see what happens in January. I don't remember what we had planned for January, but we're going to figure it out.
We had a movie, but I forgot what it was.
I could look it up, but I don't remember. I had it somewhere.
Because this month is batteries not included. Next month, we're not sure.
We wrote them down somewhere.
You wrote it down, so.
I just have to find it because I don't remember where I put it.
You lost it in the transporter buffer.
I probably did, but either way, with Section 31 coming out, we probably would have overrode ourselves and done Section 31 anyway.
It's true. It's very true.
And I am very excited about it, despite the lackluster look at the trailers. I still really want to see it.
Yeah.
All right. Brennan, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky, Brennan Moore. I would give you the actual name of the where to go, but Blue Sky makes no sense. But it is a fun happen place. You can find me there. You can find me on X at Brennan Mystical. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at Brennan Blue, and on YouTube, on Apple and Spotify at Page Turners They Were Not.
Absolutely. And of course, you can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Ingle1984. You know, in the future, for movie night, we should look at Treasure Planet.
Particularly with Skeleton Crew.
I have not watched Skeleton Crew, although if you want to know about Skeleton Crew, more about Skeleton Crew, check out our main page with Page Turners They Are Not, as Brendan is reviewing Skeleton Crew over on his Star Wars podcast. So check those out as well.
Yes.
All right. But of course, we end every episode. Kapla! And live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.